May it please the court, counsel, members of the jury. Optics and evidence are two very different things. Optics can be manipulated, but evidence cannot be. Someone misused Mel Tam's money without her knowledge, and it's those optics the government is relying on because they don't have the evidence. Optics are how things look and how we perceive them, and evidence are things that can be proven. They're the facts. And the optics in this case are all about parents. Parents, just like Mel Tam, do things all the time to help their children get ahead and succeed. They pay for piano lessons or for their children to play on competitive sports teams. And things like that are never seen as bad optics or parents trying to game the system. No, things like that are seen as helping their children get ahead, which is exactly what Mel Tam was trying to do. She wanted to use her tools and resources to help her daughter Jewel get into college. She did not change her daughter's test scores, and she did not pay off college administrators. Someone else did that without her knowledge. And it's those optics the government is relying on and hinging their entire case on. Members of the jury, remember that optics can always be manipulated, but evidence can't be. Today, the government had to prove to us that Mel Tam knew her money was being misused by Mr. Matthews. But beyond that, they also had to prove that that's how she wanted her money to be used. The government proved two things to us today. The first was that Mel wanted the best for her daughter, and we know that because it says it in the emails they showed us. We want the best for our daughter. What parent doesn't? The other thing that they proved to us is that they genuinely believed that Mr. Matthews was running a legitimate business. Because when they bugged the Tams' phones, the Tams were relieved that Mr. Matthews was not indicted like everyone else, because they genuinely believed he was running an honest business. What the government didn't prove to us is that the Tams knew that Mr. Matthews was using their money to lie and cheat. The government is relying on the optics of two checks. One was a $10,000 consultation check, and the other was a $140,000 check for charity. How do we know that the Tams wanted this money to go to charity? Because it says it right here, for charity. They didn't write a blank check. They didn't leave the memo blank. They wrote that it was for charity. But the Tams had no control over how Mr. Matthews would use that money once he cashed the check. What we do know is that Mel Tam knew that Jewel studied very hard for the SATs, that she was in her room for hours and on the phone with the tutor. We know that Jewel had her own accomplishments, like being on the mock trial team and a huge social media following. And we do know that Jewel wrote her own essay about her own experience because Mel herself reviewed it. Those are the things that Mel knows. What she didn't know is that Mr. Matthews would be using her money that was for charity to hire a doctor to lie about Jewel potentially having ADHD, that he would use that money to pad the pockets of college administrators, and that he would doctor the results of Jewel's SAT scores. Members of the jury, the government wants us to believe that there's no way people could just donate $140,000 to charity, that they had to know how that money was being used. But the Tams told us themselves in that very same wiretap, we don't know what this is all about. We don't know what this is all about. That's the evidence the government showed us today. The government proved that Mel Tam didn't know how her money was being used. But the sad truth is, members of the jury, that it's much easier to change the optics around someone like Mel Tam than it is to hold the true fraudulent actors accountable, because that would mean going after huge organizations. Members of the jury, Mel Tam was not the one who changed her daughter's scores or lied about her having ADHD or padded the pockets of college administrators. Someone else did that and used her money to do it without her knowledge. And that is exactly what the evidence and the optics in this case support. Mel Tam was simply trying to be a good mom. We have the evidence and we have the optics. And that's exactly why we are asking you to find Mel Tam not guilty on the charge of honest service wire fraud.